So Leicester beat Aston Villa 4-2, and a lot of fresh faces in the team. I think it was 3, wasn't it? New players in the Leicester lineup. And Brendan Rodgers has been saying for about a year now, hasn't he, that he needs some fresh faces in that lineup. And we mentioned Unai Emery and his impact on Villa. I don't think, again, like Arsenal, really, he'll look at this result with too much concern. It was just wasteful on their part. But for Leicester, they took their chances. And Dave, that, for me, I thought was the difference between Leicester of a few weeks ago and Leicester this weekend. Just taking their chances, looking more motivated, and Tete looks a really energetic winger, doesn't he, to add to the mix for them?
Yeah, I mean, what did they have? Was it 4 shots and 4 goals?
Yeah.
I mean,
4 on target. I think they had 9 across the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it says a lot, really. I mean, one thing I did notice, Leicester obviously clinical in the way that they took their chances. And yeah, you mentioned Tete there, who was obviously very impressive on his debut and the way he took his goal. I'm actually quite surprised that Leon let him go, to be fair, because he's actually had quite a good season. And at Shakhtar, he was actually one of their main men. So I'd be surprised if Leicester get him permanently, because I think there'll be bigger teams in for him. From looking at kind of his profile, and typically
his
probably the sort of player that Villa would like. I just think Leicester. Iheanacho, for me, he's been waiting for a chance for a while, and he's come in and actually had such a great game, goal and 2 assists. I thought you've got to mention Dewsbury Hall's ball out to Barnes for Iheanacho's goal was world class. Like that crossfield diagonal ball, and Iheanacho took it really well. And it's somebody I kind of gets cast into the shadows, isn't he? Really, Iheanacho over the years. There was a time when we were talking about him and Rashford as the next 2 real kind of big talents in the league, and he's had a bit of a tough time. So it's good to see him actually doing well again. I just feel as though Leicester did actually exploit Villa, just for some reason was so tentative playing out this game. And I hate to mention it because he's done so well recently, but Kamara was probably at fault for 2 goals. Lost the ball kind of in the defensive third, and Leicester just took advantage of that. And it's not something that we don't know. Leicester actually have a really good counter press, and they pick their moments to press really cleverly. So I wasn't surprised to see that happen. I was more surprised just to see how Villa just gave away their goals.
Yeah, I think they'll be surprised as well, because they've been on such a good run of form, and I'm sure Unai Emery was tearing his hair out watching it unfold in front of him. But putting Villa aside for a second, Miles, if we can, we'll come on to them later, but Leicester needed this result, didn't they? And it's a change to see Brendan Rodgers and a team of Brendan Rodgers actually perform the way we know they can. Like Dave said, there's some very talented players in that Leicester team, like the Wolves team we've just talked about as well. But they've just lain fairly dormant for the last year or so. Did it just need a bit of energy and a bit of freshness from the transfer market? Is that all that was missing, really?
Yeah, I think so, because actually, if you remember, we were kind of critical of Leicester's transfer market in the summer, and then they started the season poorly. I know they brought in Feist, but it took him a long time to get going, didn't it? And they'd obviously sold Fofana. They'd not signed a new contract down for Tielemans or Maddison, which is still not resolved, by the way. Let's not forget that. But January does look a lot more successful for them. And yeah, energy was the thing with this one, clearly. Dave mentioned their high press. Yes, there were mistakes in the Villa back line, and we'll talk about them shortly, I'm sure. But it was down to the fact that Leicester were just up for this. And that's something that we haven't always seen from Leicester this season. They have been a bit lethargic at times. And the energy that Maddison brings, him being back, obviously, is a really influential thing. The calmness he had in front of goal to take his as well was really good. Tete, you're right to mention, he caused all sorts of problems on that side. And he was just aware constantly. And for a new player to come into a team and be that aware of where his teammates are moving and where the ball's going, that's excellent too. So, yeah, a great win for Leicester. I don't think we can overplay it. I think they were fortunate, I'll be totally honest. They were clinical, but they should not have had the chances that they had. So you want to see them create them off their own back a bit more. I don't want to sound like I'm undermining what they did, because their press was excellent. And that, I suppose, in itself is them creating chances. But they allowed Villa to have the ball. They countered at times. They were waiting for those opportunities. But We'll see. I don't think Leicester are in serious trouble. We never really thought that they would get relegated, even when they're in that terrible position at the start of the season. You just thought they had enough quality to pull them out of it and a good enough manager to do it. So they've stuck with Rodgers. They've invested again. They'll be fine. My only other real comment to make on the Leicester game, and I know he's been around for a little while now, but Kieran Dewsbury-Hall just feels like a football manager regen, like a player that I swear he didn't exist, and then all of a sudden had 30 appearances in a row for Leicester. I don't know where he came from.
He's a late bloomer. He's been kind of knocking on the door from the reserve team for quite a while. And he's a local lad as well. And he's been given his chance and absolutely taking it. Because for somebody who's broken to the first team, he's quite old, really, isn't he? In his early 20s. It's normally something you do in your teens. But he's took his chance. And he looks like he could potentially get an England call-up at some point in the next year.
That would be mental.
He's pretty good, isn't he?
He's all right. I wouldn't go that far. The other really big news coming out of Leicester that happened a week ago, but I would put money on the fact that the majority of people watching this or listening to this don't know, and I'll be amazed if either of you two caught it as well. Did you know on deadline day, Mark Albrighton joined West Brom?
Yeah, I did. I thought of you straight away because I know you love him.
Yeah, no, that is the most under the radar signing that you will see in this window. I'm gutted. I don't want to
He only scored, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
He scored
for Leicester. I think in the FA Cup, didn't he?
Yeah.
He played and scored it, and then all of a sudden I looked and I was like, hang on, why is he holding a West Brom shirt? Bizarre.